Hello and welcome to the City of London Corporation's apprenticeship webinars. I'm Claire Tunley, the Head of Employability at the City of London Corporation. Since the apprenticeship levy was introduced in 2017, we've supported a range of businesses to understand how apprenticeships work. And to help businesses understand the process, we've designed this series of webinars to look at some of the complexity, the language around apprenticeships and simplify the steps involved in taking on an apprentice. These videos cover a range of topics, including the levy, how to use it, training providers, endpoint assessors, and how to recruit. All information covered is accurate and complete today, but please do refer to the Government Apprenticeship website for the most recent information, as the guidance does change. Today I'm joined by Karis Stander, MD of Investment 2020. Investment 2020 look at entry-level recruitment and diversity into the investment management industry. Hello, Karis.
Hi, Claire.
And today we're going to look at some of the things to think about when hiring an apprentice externally, so a new hire into the business. As we've heard in earlier webinars, apprenticeships are really jobs with training attached, and apprentices will need an employment contract as any other employee would. But they are a really good way of attracting new talent into a business, such as alongside a graduate scheme or internship, and can be a really good new source of talent. So Karis, if businesses want to attract new talent into the business, are there some things that employers should really think about when looking at the job description or advert?
Absolutely. I think the job description and the advert is really quite essential to the whole process. And the first thing to think about is, who are you looking at? Who is your audience? Who's the sort of person who's going to be doing that role? To ask yourself, are they likely to know anything about the industry? Are they likely to know anything about your business? And are they likely to know anything about the department that you're looking to recruit into? Certainly from my experience in financial services, I find that most young people really are not that aware of the many different job opportunities that are available within the industry. So I think it's fair to say, to start from a starting point, that they won't understand what it is that the job is about. So really, the focus for the business should be looking at, when they're writing the job description, is to write it with the young person in mind, with the assumption that they don't know about the role, to take away jargon, to try and explain the job and to bring it to life in a way that they will be able to understand. So really, simply put, know your audience.
We can see some of the points to consider on the slide in the webinar. We have noted before that an apprenticeship is a job with training, and you're training the apprentice to be at the standard at the end of the apprenticeship, not necessarily at the start. So Karis, does that make a difference to some of the requirements you might put into a job description?
Absolutely. I think what's important is to tease out what are the skills that the young person needs to do in order to be able to develop within the role, rather than looking at what the specific experience is that you would like them to have once they are doing the role. Employers can sometimes set very high benchmark requirements and academic requirements in order to apply for a role. And I do question, is that necessary? And is the academic requirement necessary in order to be able to develop and do the job properly? Be careful about putting barriers to entry, because academic achievement does not necessarily translate into success within the business.
Karis, we know that diversity and inclusion is always a consideration in external recruitment for companies these days. So are there any practical things that companies can do to support diversity at the recruitment stage?
I think firms need to be careful of unconscious bias creeping into the recruitment process, and that really starts at the job description process, looking and filtering applications, and there's also when it comes down to making the decision on who to hire. Ask yourself, who has written the job description, and is there unconscious bias creeping within the job description? And just having a look at some basic language, for example. I see a lot of job descriptions, and while I know the firm and the recruiter behind it is really keen to see diversity of applications, and that's diversity across the spectrum, gender, social mobility, BAME, and so forth. Yet sometimes when you read the job description, it's interesting to see that there's gendered language sitting within it, and that may put off your intended target group without actually realizing it. Just looking at the slides, we do know from research that women are less likely to apply for jobs if they don't feel that they can do everything on the job. So just making sure that you have language within the job description that is female friendly and female gendered.
So companies that want to look at the language they're using within their job descriptions and adverts, can they use some online tools to look at some of the wording to help them with this?
Yes, I think it's really important to just do a little bit of research when you're writing your job description about what language to avoid and what language that you can use instead that can be slightly more powerful. Just to give you an example, ambition is a word that often creeps up in job descriptions. But I do ask, is this not interchangeable with words like aspiration? And would that not be more attractive to a more diverse cohort of people that you would like to recruit?
So, Karis, you've mentioned that many companies are keen to look in different places and find talent from other sources. So, how might companies actually go about this in a practical way?
When it comes to looking at entry-level talent, I think it's good to start at what the firm can do themselves before they look externally about how they can get support. As a starting point, they can go to schools and colleges if you're looking at an apprenticeship program designed at school leavers, but also if you're looking at apprentices who are coming from university. It's good to get to young people when they're still at school because you can start to inspire them to think of the industry and think of careers within your particular business before they go on to university.
And I know that many companies already have relationships with schools and colleges, may offer work experience or paid internships already, and that can be a good source of candidates.
Work experience programs are a really good way of knowing who you're getting for your apprenticeship program in much the same way that internships work for graduate programs. For universities, I also recommend that firms think bigger than just the usual Russell Group and the usual universities that tend to feed city apprenticeship programs. I think there are so many new universities that really are undermined and undervalued. They are rich in diversity. They have young people who have aspired to higher education but often find themselves in a tricky position when it comes to applying to city graduate schemes. I think by mobilizing your workforce to go in and talk and encourage them to go and speak in schools, colleges, and universities is an excellent way of developing them, getting them public speaking skills, and also allowing them to be part of the attraction process and building that pipeline.
And we've heard earlier as well that in earlier webinars that there's no age limit for apprenticeships, so it can actually apply for people that might be thinking about changing careers or returning to work after a break. So there might be other routes there to attract people to apply for the apprenticeships. For apprenticeships, there are some particular routes to actually advertise the apprenticeship vacancy. The government have a recruit and apprentice portal where apprenticeship vacancies can be posted. At the moment, this is only training providers who can post the vacancies on the portal, but it might be a useful source of applications to the vacancy. Many training providers also offer a bespoke recruitment service, which sometimes is included in the apprenticeship training cost or can be an added paid for add-on. But you've also mentioned third parties, Karis, other organisations that might be able to help with recruitment.
Absolutely. There are lots of organisations out there who are able to help with school, college and university recruitment. I think the important thing as an employer is to ask yourself, what is their education outreach strategy and do they offer you the end audience that you are looking for?
Karis, we've heard earlier about the whole selection process and we've spoken about the job description, but what about the actual selection part of the process? Are there any things that businesses might want to think about here?
I think it's important that businesses are clear that they are recruiting somebody who's going to be developing in the role and they're not going to be fully formed at the recruitment stage. My advice to businesses is always remember to recruit for potential, look for that special spark and don't look for the polish.
We've also heard from some potential apprentices that if they don't understand the whole process involved in selection for an apprenticeship, they actually sometimes withdraw from the process. So some businesses like to be really clear up front about the different steps in the selection and assessment part of the job.
I think that's brilliant advice and I agree completely with that. Just bear in mind if a young person doesn't really understand the industry and they don't really know the firm, it can be a little bit scary, it can be daunting. And the clearer you are upfront about what you're looking for, when you're looking for them to do something by and to apply by, and when you're going to get back to them by, does make it infinitely less scary and it makes you look more approachable. For many young people, CVs can be a little bit thin because they don't have that much experience to be able to draw from and talk about. How about asking open-ended questions that tell you more about the person and whether they have that special spark that you'd like to find out more about?
And some sense of their aspirations and what they want to do in the industry in the future. The government has published an apprenticeship recruitment guide which can be a helpful source of advice and guidance for businesses. That concludes our webinar on hiring an apprentice from outside your business. So I just want to say thank you to Karis for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.